All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Family Movie Time podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Giordano, and today we're going to talk about the great Muppet Caper from 1981. My special guest today is Vincent Gargiulo.
Hi-ho!
He is a filmmaker, musician, all-around creative person, and I'll let you say anything else you want about yourself.
No, I liked hearing it from your voice.
Okay. I want to first say that The Great Muppet Caper is the only Jim Henson directed Muppet movie, and I recently rewatched the film, and
you hated it.
Did not hate it. I would say that my personal choice or favorite Muppet movie is the first film.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated the practical effects, the special effects in this one, especially the hot air balloon, and acknowledging this is 1981 technology for film, so they used remote-controlled puppets, radio-controlled hot air balloons. They had a cameraman dangling off the bottom of the helicopter to get the right shots. The Miss Piggy underwater musical number, very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And from my research, it was the most difficult scene to shoot in the whole film, which involved lighting, camera people, cameras, speakers, monitors underwater. 18 professional swimmers had to dive into the pool at the same moment. The bike riding sequence, radio-controlled bikes.
This movie sounds amazing, Jeff.
I think
sounds like a 10 out of 10 for me.
For me, it feels like the story is scattered. And perhaps it has something to do with that there were two screenplays for this movie. So the movie is a composite, basically, of two scripts. The Muppets Hit the Road, and The Good, the Bad, and the Muppets. Is this your favorite Muppet movie?
No. It's not. But the original 1979's Muppet movie is my favorite one.
Okay.
It's for many different reasons, but I'm here to defend The Great Muppet Caper, which, if the Muppet movie is the Muppet movie is 11 out of 10, and The Great Muppet Caper is 10 out of 10. And whatever problems you have with the script or the multiple things or whatever, I'm here to debunk.
I will say that the reflexive humor in this film, the only time I really laughed with the reflexive humor was the Oscar the Grouch cameo. Where they basically like, what are you doing here? And he says, this is my cameo in the movie. Like, that was, to me, the funniest reflexive moment. The reflexive humor, it gets redundant after a while.
That is your opinion, Jeff.
Do you think it works for the whole film?
Yes, of course I think it works. So, I mean, the Great Muppet Caper is hilarious. I watched it somewhat recently again, and I just was laughing the whole time. The humor is very much of that time period. It's not much different than Steve Martin or Mel Brooks or Monty Python or anything else. It's very bizarre, surrealist, self-referential, and that's the same thing they were doing on the TV show. And it's just hilarious. Like, you take away all that great stuff you said about the technical stuff, which is impressive too, but it's just funny. Like, if I want to watch a Muppet movie to laugh, that's the one I'm going to choose. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Vern?
Do you have a favorite scene from the film?
Well, the Piggy fantasy comes to mind. I mean, because you have Charles Grodin lip syncing a love song to Miss Piggy. But the opening is amazing. When I watched it recently, I was like, I just was thinking this is the best opening to a movie ever. Because we forget what we're looking at because those characters are so defined. The story is good. We're not thinking about the puppetry. I'm not thinking about it anyway. I'm just caught up in the story and the characters. We're watching the hot air balloon opening sequence, and they're talking about the credits, which is hilarious in itself. And then they fall from the ground, and it's a huge musical. And from my understanding, that's what Jim wanted to do. He wanted to make a big, old-fashioned, 30s, 40s musical, and I think he did that. So, what's the question? What's my favorite scene?
The opening, I guess. The Miss Piggy fantasy swimming scene you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many funny lines and situations. Everybody has their moment in it. Yeah.
I really appreciated the darkroom scene because you realize halfway through, I guess, that they're in a bathroom using it as a darkroom for Gonzo's photo.
Exactly.
And then people are knocking on the door because they need to use the bathroom.
See, it's funny.
That, to me, was the most funny scene, laugh out loud.
But
I did laugh in other places, too.
The whole concept of the movie is that Kermit and Fozzie are twin brothers. How is that not funny? And they show a picture of their uncle or dad or something, and it's a composite of both of them. It's hilarious. Get out of here.
Is this the most heartfelt Muppet movie?
No, it's not. Absolutely not. But, I mean, it has heart. They're doing something different with it. I mean, and that's what one thing I respect about all those movies, that they're continually pushing different envelopes and trying different things. The Muppet movie, the first one, it's their first outing, right? And so they're trying what they're capable of. And then the Great Muppet Caper builds on top of that, and it's even more flashy and more elaborate. In the first one, you see just Kermit riding a bike. In the Great Muppet Caper, you see everyone riding a bike. And we just take it for granted that there's a frog and pig riding a bike. We don't even think about how is that working. You know what I mean?
Yes. I think maybe a fair common ground to agree on, this film, The Great Muppet Caper, is more in the spirit of the original television series, perhaps. The energy of it and the spectacle, the sketch comedy style.
Could be.
It seems like it.
I mean, it's very character-based. So, if you're not as familiar with the Muppets, I think it could be, what am I watching? The Muppet movie is good at setting everybody up. So if you knew nothing about any of these characters, you would learn about them. The Great Muppet Caper goes in assuming that you know all these people. And if you're a Muppet freak like I am, then you do know all those people, and it's just fun.
Do you remember how old you were when you first watched The Great Muppet Caper?
No, it was later. The first one I saw was The Muppets Take Manhattan, which is the lesser of the three made when Jim was alive. But it's still great in its own way. But that's a different episode. But I watched that one first, because that was the one that was fresh when I was born. And I must have been young when I saw all of them. But I would come home from school and watch The Muppet Show. And I loved the Muppets, and anything they were involved in, I watched. I think I had both on VHS.
I do think that the Muppets are an American treasure. And, we could talk for hours about Jim Henson and his creative mind. And,
well, I only have 30 minutes.
And his team. What do you think? What is the cultural impact of the Muppets or this movie?
I mean, I don't know if the movie itself made a cultural impact, but advances in puppetry, certainly. The Muppets' relevance in this time, hard to say. They're very beloved. Where they end up, everything in life is ephemeral. So it's hard to say where their body of work influences in time. We're still pretty close to their beginning. So, they certainly influenced a lot of people who grew up with them. Yeah.
And it seems like this film, The Great Muppet Caper, the other, 7 films,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of for all ages, right? Like adults, kids,
Yeah.
To me, that's one of the stronger, maybe, aspects and why they endure over time. Which character from The Great Muppet Caper do you identify with or find to be the most interesting?
Well, I'll take it outside of the Muppet Caper because they're in all the movies. But, it's generic, but I'm going with Kermit. He's very relatable. He's very multifaceted. The other ones, I love them all, but some of them, they're a bit one note. But Kermit has complexities, depth, and we got to go back also just to the performances of the Muppeteers themselves. Like you put on a sock on your hand and see how well it is. It's their acting, and the combination of Jim Henson and Frank Oz, particularly when they're interacting with each other, it's comedy gold. You look at Bert and Ernie, or Piggy and Kermit, or Kermit and Fozzie, or any of it. So I'm going to go with Kermit the Frog as my favorite Muppet.
With respect to Kermit, it's interesting how the original conceptual idea for Kermit came from Jim Henson's one of the coats of his mother, and he turned it into Kermit, and then he cut a table tennis ball in half for the eyes. I thought that was really kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it's a rags to riches story in a way. I guess literally, almost.
And with that early version of the Kermit character, Jim would bring it to his grandfather, who was ill, and kind of entertain his grandfather during his last days. Mm-hmm. I found that to be really, kind of encouraging or inspiring.
Who's your favorite Muppet, Jeff?
Overall?
Yes.
I think Zoot.
You would.
I always enjoy seeing Zoot in any scenes, maybe because of my own love for jazz and musicians and music. Kermit's up there as well, an Animal.
Why do you like Animal?
The energy.
That's just like you inside.
I think the energy that he brings and those drum skills. I'm kind of jealous.
Well, he is a good drummer. I'll give him that. Yeah.
Do you think the Muppets reflect society in any way, or the world? Like on a deep on a deeper level? Or existence?
I mean, yes. I mean, everything does, right?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, you can watch an episode of The Muppet Show, and yes, there's some guest stars on it that, like, who is that nowadays? But by and large, it holds up. So it's a little bit of its time, but it really, you can watch it now and get just as much enjoyment out of it. So I guess that speaks to the entire human existence, the timelessness of it. Yeah.
The parody aspect of the Muppets, and even some burlesque and surreal humor, slapstick. It's always impressive the way, with all of these Muppet films and the show, the way they weave together these elements and blend the Muppets with the human world. Almost kind of magical.
It is. I would argue that it's, as close to real life magic as we can see. I mean, again, like, going back to like the Great Muppet Caper, and like, they're in a hot air balloon, they're riding a bike, they're singing underwater. This is a frog and a pig, and think of what has to go into that to make that happen. And it's not just the movements, but the character and the personality and the acting of it that has to all fit so perfectly to pull that off. So that is magic, my friend.
Have the Muppets inspired you in your own creative endeavors?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think everything I do in some way, subconsciously or consciously, that spirit of the Muppets is present in all my work. The whimsy, the experimental nature of some of it, the comedy. It is just embedded into my system. And going back to why I find Kermit relatable is because he's just trying to put on a good show, and he's surrounded by loonies. And as a person doing the same kind of thing with my films and music, that's a lot how it feels like. Kermit, I feel like, has softened a little bit in the last 20 years, but you watch those Muppet shows, or even before that, I mean, he's on Sesame Street, the guy's got a temper. He's pissed off almost all the time, and it's hilarious when he goes off. So yes.
I like that you mentioned Sesame Street, because they did make appearances on, was it from the late 60s, 70s, or throughout the whole Sesame Street?
Well, Sesame Street was first, so it came out in 69, and Kermit was on that first episode, and he continued to be throughout existence. Maybe he's still on, I don't really know. I kind of aged out of Sesame Street. But he's really the only one who morphed between the two shows. The rest of the Muppets, they stayed in their little universe. Christmas is coming up, so I think any Muppet fan already knows about this, but if you're the casual Muppet fan, it's time to bust out Muppet Family Christmas, made in the 80s, where all the various Henson worlds collide for a Christmas gathering. You have the Muppets from the Muppet Show, you have the Sesame Street characters, you have the Fraggle Rock characters, you have everybody coming in for Christmas. Even Jim Henson is there. He's washing dishes with Sprocket at the end. If that doesn't make you tear up, nothing will. And you're cold-hearted.
Why do you think it's gone, so much time has gone by, it seems, since the last Muppet movie?
Mm-hmm.
And another question, you could choose whatever one you want to answer, or both. Would you ever want to direct a Muppet movie?
What was the first question you asked?
Why do you think it's been so long since they made a Muppet movie?
Well, I mean, they have been active. I mean, I think, the Muppets are owned by Disney now, and it always feels from the outset that they're never quite sure what to do with those characters. They try a whole bunch of different things. I mean, they did have a show, like The Office, for like 2 seasons. And the Electric Mayhem had their own show. None of these things really seem to last or take off much. I liked Muppets Most Wanted, which was the last movie that they made. I thought it carried a similar, let's just have fun spirit that is similar to The Great Muppet Caper. So they still do things. What was the second question?
Would you ever want to direct or write a Muppet movie?
Well, I did. It's called The Muppetless Movie. I can't recommend it because it's not great. But, and that's where live actors played the classic Muppet characters. And, no, I mean, if they were offering me money to do it, yes. But, it's such an institution, and I think even probably the current people, as talented as they are, there is some, they're holding up an amazing, beloved legacy where people are going to be upset no matter what. Kermit's current voice is a little different than what we've heard in the past. It takes some getting used to. And, where the Muppets go, I don't know. But, they're trying things, and if they want me to be involved, I'll answer the phone.
Would you be able to write a screenplay for a new Muppet movie, like a feature-length film, if somebody were to ask you to do that? Could you come up with some good ideas?
What have you heard, Jeff? People asking me? You heard on the street that,
Not yet.
I know a guy who could write a Muppet movie. Sure. Yes.
Back to The Great Muppet Caper, I want to acknowledge Oswald Morris, who was the cinematographer for the film, also photographed The Wiz, 1978, Fiddler on the Roof, 1971, Oliver, with an exclamation point, 1968.
That's better than the one with the period at the end.
And we can't leave out, you mentioned Fraggle Rock, which was 1983 to 1987, also created by Jim Henson. We should include The Dark Crystal, 1982, Labyrinth, 1986, the Dinosaur TV show, which I remember watching as a kid. I forget the years for that one. I think it's from the 90s.
Yeah, like 90 to 92. I think that's one of the last things Jim was personally involved with. There's been a lot.
Yeah. The music for The Great Muppet Caper I found interesting. It's by the same person,
Joe Raposo,
who did the Sesame Street theme song.
Several songs for Sesame Street, yeah. He was kind of their main songwriter for a while, especially on Sesame Street. Yeah.
You mentioned Frank Oz.
Mm-hmm.
We have a little bit of time left. What can you say about Frank Oz and his relationship to the Muppets?
He's as valuable as Jim in many ways. He was there very early on, when they were still doing commercials in New York. And word on the street is that, he's offered to be involved with Muppets currently, but isn't really wanted. So that's discouraging because, he's the guy, he's the closest thing that we have. And, all those great Muppeteers, a lot of them have passed. Like, he's still alive. Dave Goelz, who does Gonzo and Dr. Bunsen, he's still alive. Steve Whitmire is still around, who came in a little bit later, but he did a lot of classic characters like Rizzo and took over Kermit once Jim died. But even he doesn't do that anymore for reasons I don't understand. But yeah.
It's also worth including the Henson family would often be involved with the show and the films. Brian Henson, correct me if I'm wrong, directed the Muppet Treasure Island film.
Probably.
And Joan Henson, or Jane, Jim's wife.
That was his wife, yeah.
She was also involved too.
Well, it sounds like it was all encompassing in terms of Jim's time. So it's either get involved or never see their husband or father. So yeah.
What can you say about, if you're willing to answer this one, balancing the personal life, creative life, time to relax, recharge, rest. Henson, it's no secret he was so passionate and driven and almost endless creative ideas and innovative or revolutionary creative ideas.
It's a balance, right? My understanding is he had a very small team for a long time, and with success he was able to build that team, and suddenly he didn't have to do everything anymore. He did direct A Great Muppet Caper, but then he let Frank Oz do the next one, while he focused on the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. He wanted to do other things, and other people were focused on the other things. I don't know. I haven't read the bios per se, but I'm sure he was in it 24/7. But everybody needs a break at once in a while. I certainly do, Jeff. I'm so tired.
We got 3 minutes left.
Okay.
The film, back to the film a little bit.
Yes.
It was shot entirely in England.
Yes. So was the show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth mentioning, to go way back in time, Sam and Friends, that ran from 1955 to 1961, was Henson's first show of any kind, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And then he did some commercials for different things.
Yeah, he did commercials. He'd have an occasional guest spot on the Ed Sullivan Show or the Tonight Show. And then it wasn't really until Sesame Street where he found world-renowned fame. He's also an experimental filmmaker. He did several films. I think one was either nominated or won an award.
Timepiece,
yeah, I
think is one of the major short films.
Yeah, I think that's the one I think might have won an Academy Award.
And he stars in that one too.
He does, yeah.
I liked how you said experimental filmmaker, because I think maybe that should be included with his name more often, the way he did experiment with cinema and puppetry and human actors and
the Muppets,
practical effects.
Muppets are, extremely experimental when you get down to what's actually happening, and that wasn't really seen. There were popular puppets before them, but it took it to a next level.
Any thoughts about the contemporary landscape of live-action, family-friendly movies? Do you have any favorites or opinions about that?
As someone who does not have a family, no. I don't see them very often. What's one I should watch?
The Peanut Butter Falcon.
Peanut Butter Falcon?
Yeah.
What is that? That's a new movie?
Oh, well, it's not 2024, but I think it's from 4 or 5 years ago. Shia LaBeouf.
All right, I'm out.
It's a good one.
Okay, I'll believe you. What are the puppets like in that one?
There's no puppets. I'm
out. You're telling me to watch a movie with Shia LaBeouf and no puppets?
Do you think it would be wise to re-release these films in theaters? I know they re-released Great Muppet Caper in 2021. It had a theatrical 40th anniversary.
I didn't know that. I would have watched it. Was it successful? that will answer the question. I don't know.
I don't have the gross.
I don't think
stats
people
on
are
that.
going to the theaters regardless of what's playing. So, I don't know, maybe.
Do you think it's kind of moved to just streaming? Is that the family-friendly viewing habits these days?
I think so. I mean, it's all on Disney Plus, I think, for the most part. I did see the Muppet movie in New York on the big screen.
Oh, wow.
They have a whole Jim Henson permanent exhibit at the Museum of Moving Image in New York.
Is that the only one you've seen on the big screen?
Since I was an adult. Yeah.
Anything else to say about...
I love you, Jeff.
Thanks for your time, Vincent. And thanks everybody for listening in. We'll see you next time.